Adam Hendricks adjusted the camera lens, focusing on the weathered face of the woman sitting across from him in the dimly lit interview room. She was the third whistleblower this month, and her story about the pharmaceutical company's cover-up would make his next documentary. For 8 years, he'd built a reputation exposing corruption, one frame at a time. His work had brought down executives, politicians, and organizations that thought they were untouchable. But he never imagined he'd need those same skills against his own family. The December wind rattled the windows of his Brooklyn studio apartment as Adam packed his equipment that evening. His son Dylan's drawing was taped to the wall above his desk, a stick-figure family holding hands under a smiling sun. The 5-year-old had given it to him last week with a gap-toothed grin. "That's us, Dad. We're happy." Adam's phone buzzed. A text from his wife, Mallory. "Don't forget, we leave for Connecticut at 6 a.m. tomorrow. Mom wants us there early to help with Christmas setup." He sighed. 3 years of marriage to Mallory Buchanan had taught him that Christmas at the Buchanan estate wasn't a celebration. It was a performance. Her mother, Nanny Buchanan, orchestrated every detail with military precision, and anyone who deviated from her script faced consequences. Their relationship hadn't always been complicated. Adam met Mallory at a fundraiser 6 years ago. She was volunteering for a literacy nonprofit, seemed genuinely kind, and laughed at his terrible jokes. She was beautiful in an understated way, with auburn hair and intelligent green eyes. She told him about her degree in social work, her plans to open a counseling center for underprivileged kids. She seemed different from her family's reputation. He should have paid attention to the warnings. His best friend, Cornell Sullivan, a fellow documentary filmmaker, had pulled him aside before the wedding. "Man, I did some research on the Buchanans. They're not good people. Nanny Buchanan's destroyed business partners, pushed out anyone who challenged her. There are lawsuits, allegations. Mallory isn't her mother," Adam had insisted. "The apple doesn't fall far, brother." Adam had ignored him. He was in love. And when Dylan was born, he thought he saw Mallory soften, become the woman he'd married. But after they moved closer to Connecticut, closer to her family's orbit, something shifted. Mallory started echoing her mother's opinions, her criticisms, her cold assessments of people who didn't meet Buchanan standards. Dylan, with his dyslexia and his gentle nature, didn't meet those standards. The morning drive to Connecticut was silent except for Dylan's soft humming in the back seat. He was looking at a picture book, tracing the words with his finger. His teacher had called last week. Dylan was struggling with reading, falling behind his classmates. The school recommended testing for learning disabilities. When Adam mentioned it to Mallory, she'd gone rigid. "My family doesn't have disabilities. He just needs to focus harder. That's not how dyslexia works. Don't label him," she'd snapped. "My mother worked with children for 30 years. She'll know what to do." Nanny Buchanan had indeed worked with children, as the principal of an elite private school, where discipline meant humiliation and excellence meant perfection. She'd retired 5 years ago, but her reputation remained. She was the woman who broke the weak ones to make them strong. The Buchanan estate sprawled across 15 acres in Fairfield County. The main house was a colonial revival masterpiece, white columns gleaming against manicured lawns even in winter. Monroe Buchanan had inherited the property and the family's commercial real estate empire. At 70, he was a quiet man who spoke rarely and deferred to Nanny on everything. Adam suspected Monroe had given up fighting his wife decades ago. Mallory's brothers, Foster Buchanan and Lewis Buchanan, had already arrived with their families. Foster, the eldest at 42, ran the family business with ruthless efficiency. His wife, Holly Buchanan, was a former pageant queen who'd learned to mirror Nanny's cruelty to survive in the family. They had 2 teenage sons who attended the same prep school where Nanny had been principal. Lewis, 38, was a corporate attorney who specialized in crushing anyone who challenged his clients. His wife, Elaine Buchanan, was quieter, but Adam had watched her participate in enough cutting remarks to know she'd chosen survival over kindness too. The extended family would arrive throughout the day, aunts, uncles, cousins, family friends. 38 people total, all gathered to prove they belonged in Nanny Buchanan's world. Adam carried their bags inside while Dylan clutched his stuffed elephant, Mr. Trunk. The 5-year-old's eyes were wide, taking in the massive Christmas tree in the foyer, decorated with expensive ornaments and white lights. Adam. Nanny appeared at the top of the staircase, descending with the bearing of a queen. At 68, she was tall and angular, her silver hair styled perfectly, her clothing expensive but severe. You're late. We're actually 10 minutes early. Early is on time. On time is late. She looked past him to Dylan. And why's that child holding that filthy toy? It's his comfort object, Adam said evenly. He's 5. He's coddled. Nanny descended the last steps. Mallory, take your son upstairs. The guests will be arriving, and I won't have him dragging that thing around all day. Mallory immediately reached for Dylan's hand. Come on, sweetie. Let's put Mr. Trunk in the bedroom. Dylan's grip tightened on the elephant, but he didn't protest. That was the thing Adam had noticed over the past year. His son had learned not to protest. The light in his eyes dimmed a little more each time they visited this house. The day proceeded exactly as Nanny dictated. Guests arrived in waves, each greeted with calculated warmth or cool dismissal, depending on their standing in the family hierarchy. Adam recognized the pattern from his documentary work. This was a power structure, carefully maintained through social rewards and punishments. He watched Dylan try to play with his cousins, Foster's boys, but they ignored him. When Dylan asked if they could build with blocks, the older one sneered. That's baby stuff. Can't you even read the box? Dylan's face flushed, but he walked away quietly. Adam moved to follow, but Mallory caught his arm. Let him learn to handle it himself. He's 5 years old. My nephews are toughening him up. That's good for him. Adam pulled his arm free and found Dylan in the library, sitting in a window seat with Mr. Trunk. Hey, buddy. You okay? Dylan nodded, but his eyes were glassy. Dad, why don't they like me? They don't know you yet. And that's their loss, because you're pretty great. Grandma says I need to try harder. That I'm not. Not keeping up. Adam's jaw tightened. Grandma doesn't understand that everyone learns differently. There's nothing wrong with you. Then why does everyone keep saying, I need to be fixed? The question hit Adam like a physical blow. His son was internalizing this poison, beginning to believe he was broken. He pulled Dylan into a hug. You don't need to be fixed. You're perfect exactly as you are. But even as he said it, Adam knew the damage was spreading. Every visit to this house, every interaction with this family, chipped away at Dylan's confidence. Dinner was served at 6, a formal affair with china and crystal. The adults sat at the main table, while the children were relegated to a smaller table in the adjoining room. Adam insisted on sitting where he could see Dylan, earning a cold look from Nanny. The conversation swirled around business successes, social achievements, and carefully veiled criticism of anyone who'd failed to meet expectations. Foster's wife, Holly, described in detail how they'd just donated a wing to the prep school, ensuring their son's legacy. Family legacy is everything, Nanny announced, looking pointedly at Adam. It's about maintaining standards, preserving excellence across generations. Sometimes it's about kindness and support, Adam said quietly. The table went silent. Nanny's fork paused halfway to her mouth. Kindness without standards is weakness. I learned that running a school for 30 years. Children need discipline, structure, and high expectations. They also need compassion. And look where your compassion has gotten Dylan. She set down her fork. The child can barely read. He cries at the slightest challenge. He clings to toys like an infant. Someone needs to push him, since clearly his father won't. Mallory didn't defend their son. She stared at her plate, silent. That night, Adam couldn't sleep. He lay in the guest room, while Mallory breathed steadily beside him, apparently untroubled by her mother's attack on their son. Through the wall, he could hear Dylan crying softly. When he went to check, he found his son curled around Mr. Trunk, tears streaming down his face. I heard Grandma, Dylan whispered. She thinks I'm stupid. You're not stupid. You're one of the smartest kids I know. Then why can't I read like the other kids? Your brain works differently, that's all. Some of the greatest people in history had dyslexia. Albert Einstein, Steven Spielberg. Who's that? A filmmaker like me. He makes amazing movies, and he had trouble reading when he was your age. Adam brushed the hair from Dylan's forehead. We're going to get you help. Real help, not grandma's ideas about discipline. Mom said grandma knows best. Adam's heart sank. Sometimes moms are wrong, even when they love us. He stayed until Dylan fell asleep, then returned to the guest room. Mallory was awake now, sitting up in bed. You're undermining my mother. Your mother is destroying our son's self-esteem. She's trying to motivate him. You treat him like he's made of glass. I treat him like a child who deserves respect and support. And look where that's gotten us. He's falling behind, Adam. The other kids his age are reading chapter books, and he's still on picture books. My family has a reputation to maintain. He's 5 years old. He's not a reflection of your family's reputation. He's a human being. Mallory's face hardened in a way that reminded him terrifyingly of Nanny. Maybe if you'd been successful enough to make something of yourself, you'd understand about maintaining standards. But you're a struggling documentarian who can barely support his family, living in a tiny apartment, chasing stories nobody cares about. The words landed like punches. Adam had given up higher-paying corporate work to pursue documentary filmmaking, believing in the importance of exposing truth. Mallory had supported it once, or pretended to. This is what your mother thinks, isn't it? That I'm not good enough for the Buchanan family. This is what I think, Mallory said, but her voice was her mother's voice, her inflection her mother's inflection. You're so busy trying to save the world that you can't see your own son needs discipline, not coddling. Adam turned away. The woman he'd married was disappearing, replaced by a Buchanan clone. And if he didn't do something, Dylan would be their next victim. The next morning, Adam woke to find Dylan's bed empty. Panic shot through him until he heard voices downstairs. He descended to find Nanny in the kitchen with Dylan, who was sitting at the table with a plate of eggs he clearly didn't want. He needs to learn to eat what's put in front of him, Nanny said when Adam entered. Not just the foods he likes. Dylan looked miserable, pushing the runny eggs around his plate. He hated eggs. The texture made him gag, but he was trying to force them down under Nanny's watchful eye. He doesn't have to eat something that makes him physically uncomfortable, Adam said. Discomfort builds character. Ignoring a child's needs breaks trust. Nanny stood, her posture rigid. You have no idea how to raise a child, Adam. You're creating a weak, dependent boy who will fail at everything in life. I've seen hundreds of children, and I know the ones who succeed. They're the ones who learn early that the world doesn't cater to their feelings. Or maybe they succeed because someone believed in them. Belief without performance is delusion. She turned to Dylan. Finish your eggs. All of them. Dylan's hands were shaking. Adam watched his son force down another bite, saw him struggle not to gag, and made a decision. He crossed the kitchen and removed the plate. He's done. He most certainly is not. He's my son, and I decide when he's done. The temperature in the room dropped. Nanny's eyes were ice. You're teaching him that quitting is acceptable. I'm teaching him that his father protects him. Protection from what? Consequences? Reality? The world will eat him alive if you keep this up. Then I'll be there to help him fight back. Nanny smiled, but there was no warmth in it. We'll see how long that lasts. The rest of the morning was tense. More relatives arrived for Christmas Day festivities. Adam recognized some faces from Mallory's wedding. Aunts and uncles whose names he'd forgotten, cousins who'd never bothered to learn his. They all moved in Nanny's orbit, drawn to her approval, terrified of her disapproval. Foster pulled Adam aside before lunch. You need to fall in line. Excuse me? The family has certain expectations. You're Mallory's husband, which means you represent us now. Your son represents us. That scene this morning. That scene was me protecting my child from emotional abuse. Foster's expression hardened. He had his mother's eyes, cold and calculating. That's a serious accusation. It's an accurate one. My mother dedicated her life to education. She turned failing students into successful ones through discipline and high standards. She's trying to help Dylan, and you're sabotaging it. I'm preventing her from breaking him. You're too soft. Always have been. Mallory made a mistake marrying someone so pedestrian. Adam kept his voice level. Is that what Nanny told you to say? It's what we all think. You're not one of us. You don't have our background, our education, our prospects. The only reason we tolerate you is because Mallory loved you, past tense. Did she tell you that? She doesn't have to. We can all see it. You're losing her, Adam. She's remembering who she is, what she comes from. And you're the obstacle holding her back. Foster walked away, leaving Adam standing in the hallway, processing the threat beneath the words. His family was closing ranks, and he and Dylan were being pushed out. By afternoon, the house was full. 38 people crowded into the Buchanan Estate's expansive rooms. Cousins, in-laws, business associates who'd become honorary family. Adam counted faces, recognizing the pattern. Everyone here owed something to Nanny or wanted something from her. This was her court, and she was its absolute monarch. Dylan tried to fade into the background, but children aren't allowed to be invisible in families like this. Nanny kept calling him forward. Stand up straight, stop mumbling, look people in the eye when they speak to you. Each correction delivered with a smile for the audience. A subtle cruelty only Dylan and Adam seemed to recognize. Adam watched his son's posture change throughout the day. Dylan's shoulders curved inward, protective. His smile became forced. He stopped asking questions, stopped engaging. He was learning the first rule of survival in an abusive environment. Make yourself small. Mallory seemed oblivious, or worse, complicit. She laughed at her mother's jokes, participated in the subtle mockery of guests who weren't present, reinforced every correction Nanny made to Dylan. Adam barely recognized her. We should leave early, Adam suggested during a quiet moment. Dylan's exhausted. We leave when my mother says the celebration is over, Mallory replied. Don't be rude. Rude would be staying and letting her continue to tear down our son. She's not tearing him down. She's building him up. You're too close to see it. I see perfectly clearly. The question is, do you? Mallory's jaw tightened. I know you think you're some kind of hero, exposing corruption in your documentaries. But you can't see what's right in front of you. A family trying to help a struggling child, and a father too proud to accept that help. Help? Nanny's been bullying him since we arrived. She's been teaching him resilience. Something you clearly never learned. The comment stung because it came from a place Adam didn't recognize. This wasn't the woman he'd married, the one who'd cried at their wedding, who'd held Dylan after he was born and whispered promises about protecting him from everything. This was someone else wearing Mallory's face. Evening came. Dinner was another elaborate production, the kind of meal designed to demonstrate wealth and taste. Dylan picked at his food, clearly overwhelmed. Adam stayed close, running interference when he could, but Nanny had positioned herself where she could monitor everyone. After dinner, Nanny announced it was time for Christmas games. The adults would play charades in the main room, while the children participated in a character-building exercise she designed. Adam's instincts screamed warning. What kind of exercise? It's a surprise. The children will love it. I'd like to know what. Adam. Mallory's voice was sharp. My mother has organized children's activities for decades. She knows what she's doing. The children were led to a separate room. Adam tried to follow, but Foster blocked his path. Adults only in the main room. Trust the process. I don't trust anything happening in this house. That's your problem, not ours. Adam was physically prevented from following his son. He stood in the hallway, every instinct telling him to push past Foster, grab Dylan, and leave. But Mallory was watching with her mother's eyes, and he knew that if he made a scene, if he overreacted, they'd use it against him later. They'd say he was unstable, paranoid. They'd document it. So he waited. 15 minutes. 20. 30. Then Dylan emerged, his face pale, his eyes too bright. He walked past Adam without speaking and headed upstairs. Dylan. Adam followed him. What happened? His son didn't answer. He went to the guest room, climbed into bed fully dressed, and pulled the covers over his head. Adam sat on the edge of the bed. Talk to me, buddy. I don't want to. Dylan's voice was muffled. I'm tired. Did something happen in there? Silence. Did someone hurt you? Nobody touched me. The emphasis on touch told Adam everything. Emotional wounds, then. The kind that didn't leave visible marks. He wanted to demand answers, to storm downstairs and confront Nanny, but Dylan needed him calm, needed him present. So Adam lay down beside his son and waited. Eventually, Dylan spoke. Grandma said we were playing a game about consequences. She said everyone makes mistakes, and mistakes have to be addressed. She asked if anyone had made mistakes this Christmas. Adam's stomach tightened. My cousin said I made a mistake by not eating my eggs this morning. Grandma said that was a good example. She asked everyone what the consequence should be. Jesus Christ. They said I should write, I will not be disrespectful 100 times. And I tried, Dad. I really tried. But some of the letters came out backward, and I misspelled disrespectful, and everyone was watching, and I couldn't. His voice broke. Adam pulled his son close, rage building in his chest like a storm. You did nothing wrong. Grandma said I was embarrassing the family. She said, Mom, and you did your best, but I wasn't trying hard enough to be normal. You are normal. More than normal. You're extraordinary. Then why does everyone think I'm broken? Adam had no answer that would satisfy a 5-year-old. So he held Dylan while his son finally cried, great shaking sobs that he'd been holding back all day. And Adam made a decision. They were leaving first thing tomorrow morning, and they weren't coming back. He told Mallory they were leaving in the morning. She responded with cold fury. We stay through Christmas Day. That's the tradition. Your tradition is toxic, and I'm not subjecting our son to another day of it. You're being dramatic. Dylan needs to learn. If you say he needs to learn one more time, I'm taking him and leaving tonight. You wouldn't dare. Adam met her eyes. Try me. They slept in separate rooms that night. Or rather, Adam lay awake, listening to Dylan's fitful sleep, planning his exit strategy. He'd pack before dawn, carry Dylan to the car, if necessary, and drive away from this poisonous family forever. But Nanny Buchanan didn't become the woman she was by allowing others to defy her. Christmas morning arrived with artificial cheer. Nanny had organized a breakfast feast, and everyone gathered in the dining room. Adam noticed immediately that all 38 relatives were present, an unusual number for Christmas morning. Typically, families split up to open presents, but Nanny had summoned everyone. Dylan sat next to Adam, quiet and subdued. He barely touched his food, just pushed it around his plate. Adam's protective instincts were on high alert, but he couldn't identify the threat yet. After breakfast, Nanny stood. Before we open presents, I want to address something important. Family unity is the foundation of success, and unity requires accountability. Adam's blood went cold. Sometimes, family members make choices that affect everyone. Sometimes, those choices need to be acknowledged publicly so we can move forward together. Mallory was watching her mother with an expression Adam couldn't read. Not quite approval, but not concern either. Dylan, honey, can you come here please? Adam's hand shot out, gripping Dylan's shoulder. No, it's just a family activity, Nanny said smoothly. Nothing to be afraid of. He's not participating in your activities anymore. Adam, Mallory hissed. Don't make a scene. Watch me. But Dylan stood up. His small voice cut through the tension. It's okay, Dad. I can handle it. The courage in his son's voice broke Adam's heart. Dylan walked to where Nanny stood, his steps slow, his posture resigned. He learned that resistance only made things worse. Nanny placed her hand on Dylan's shoulder. This young man has been struggling this Christmas. He's been unable to follow simple instructions, unable to complete basic tasks, unable to meet the standards our family values. Adam stood, but Foster and Lewis moved to flank him, blocking his path. And when one person's failures affect the entire family, Nanny continued, we need to acknowledge it. We need to name it so we can address it. She pulled something from her pocket, a piece of cardboard with string attached. She'd made it ahead of time, Adam realized. This was premeditated. Sometimes children need clear reminders of their behavior's impact, Nanny said, and she held up the sign. Written in large black letters, I ruined this family. The room went silent. Even the relatives who'd been complicit in the cruelty looked uncomfortable. This was too far, and they all knew it. Adam tried to move forward, but Foster's grip on his arm was iron. Don't let go of me. You'll only make it worse for him. Nanny tied the sign around Dylan's neck. The cardboard rested against his small chest, the words bold and terrible. Dylan stood perfectly still, his face blank, his eyes fixed on something distant. Now, Nanny said, her voice carrying across the silent room, I want Dylan to walk around and show everyone what happens when we don't try our best. Mallory stood up. Adam hoped she was going to object. Instead, she walked over and adjusted the sign, making sure it hung straight. It's just a lesson, she said to Dylan. So you remember to do better. Something shattered inside Adam. Not his love for Mallory, that had been dying for months. Something deeper. The last thread of hope that she might choose their son over her mother's approval. Dylan began to walk. Around the room, between relatives who looked away, past cousins who whispered. He held his head up, his lips trembling, his eyes bright with unshed tears. He didn't cry. He didn't speak. He just walked, bearing his humiliation with a dignity no 5-year-old should have to possess. Adam stood, watching for 10 minutes. Each second felt like an hour. He cataloged every face that looked away, every person who let this happen, every relative who'd chosen comfort over courage. Then he moved. Foster and Lewis tried to stop him, but Adam had been training in Brazilian jiu-jitsu since college, a habit from his days working in conflict zones before becoming a documentary filmmaker. He broke Foster's grip, sidestepped Lewis, and crossed the room in 5 long strides. He removed his jacket as he walked, his movements deliberate and controlled. The room watched him, sensing something building, something they couldn't stop. Adam reached Dylan and knelt down. His son's eyes were glassy, his small body trembling with the effort of not crying. Without a word, Adam removed the sign from around Dylan's neck. He tore it in half, then in quarters, letting the pieces fall to the expensive carpet. Then he draped his jacket over Dylan's shoulders. It was too big, hanging almost to the floor, but it covered him like armor. Adam leaned down, his voice soft enough that only Dylan could hear. You did nothing wrong. What happens next isn't about you. It's about making sure they never do this to anyone again. Dylan nodded, understanding more than a 5-year-old should have to. Adam stood, lifting Dylan into his arms. Then he turned to face the room, and his voice carried to every corner, hard as steel. Now it's my turn. Every guest turned pale. They'd seen something in Adam's eyes, something that promised consequences. The room that had been full of cruel certainty was now thick with fear. Nanny recovered first. How dare you disrupt our family? Your family? Adam's laugh was cold. You're not a family. You're a dictatorship. And dictatorships fall when someone finally says no more. You have no right. I have every right. I'm his father. And I just watched you and 37 other adults torture a 5-year-old child for your entertainment. We were teaching him. You were destroying him. There's a difference. Mallory stepped forward. Adam, calm down. You're overreacting. He looked at his wife, really looked at her. I watched you help pin that sign on our son. I watched you prioritize your mother's approval over his well-being. And I will never forgive you for that. He needed to learn. Stop. Just stop. Adam adjusted Dylan in his arms, feeling his son's small arms tight around his neck. I've documented atrocities in 6 countries. I've interviewed abusers, watched dictators justify their cruelty, seen people rationalize terrible things. And you all sound exactly like them. The room erupted in protests, denials, anger. But Adam kept his voice steady, kept his eyes on Nanny. You think you're untouchable. You think your money, your reputation, your social position protects you. But I've taken down people with more power than you. And I'm going to make sure everyone knows exactly what you are. You're threatening me? Nanny's voice was ice. I'm promising you. You humiliated my son in front of 38 witnesses. You broke something in him that I'll spend years helping him heal. And you're going to pay for that. With what? Your little documentaries that no one watches? Your failed career? You're nothing, Adam. You always have been. Then you have nothing to worry about. Adam smiled, and there was no warmth in it. But you are worried. I can see it. Because people like you understand power, and you've just learned that I'm willing to use mine. He turned to leave, Dylan still in his arms. Mallory blocked his path. If you walk out that door, we're done. We've been done since you helped pin that sign on our son. I'm his mother. A mother protects her child. You fed him to wolves to earn your mother's approval. That's not motherhood. That's cowardice. Her hand cracked across his face. The slap echoed in the silent room. Adam didn't flinch. He'd been hit harder in worse places. He simply adjusted Dylan, making sure his son's face was turned away, then walked past Mallory, past Foster and Lewis, who no longer tried to stop him, past 38 people who'd chosen cruelty over courage. At the door, he turned back one final time. You all watched it happen. Every single one of you. Remember that when the consequences come. Then Adam Hendricks carried his son out of the Buchanan estate into the cold December morning and began planning their revenge. The Brooklyn apartment felt smaller than Adam remembered, but it also felt safe. Dylan hadn't spoken since they'd left Connecticut, just sat in the passenger seat, clutching Mr. Trunk, staring out the window. When they arrived home, he went straight to his room and closed the door. Adam gave him space for an hour, then knocked softly. Can I come in? Dylan was sitting on his bed, drawing. Adam sat beside him and looked at the picture. A house on fire, stick figures running away. You want to talk about it? I don't have the words. Dylan's voice was small. I feel them, but I don't know how to say them. Adam's chest tightened. His 5-year-old son was struggling to articulate trauma. That's okay. Sometimes feelings are too big for words. Dad, Dylan looked up, his eyes red. Why did Mom help Grandma? It was the question Adam had been dreading. I don't know, buddy. Sometimes people forget who they're supposed to protect. Does she love me? Yes. But love isn't always enough when people are broken inside. Am I broken? No. Adam put his arm around Dylan. You're the strongest person I know. What you did today, walking around that room, not crying, keeping your dignity, that took courage most adults don't have. I wanted to cry, but you didn't. You didn't give them that power over you. Dylan leaned against him. What happens now? Now we make sure they can never do this to anyone else. Ow! I'm going to tell their story. The truth about who they really are. Will it hurt them? Yes. Dylan was quiet for a moment. Then good. The word, spoken in his son's voice, broke something open in Adam. Not just anger. He'd been angry for months. This was something colder, more focused. Purpose. His phone had been buzzing for hours. Texts from Mallory demanding he bring Dylan back. Messages from Foster threatening legal action. A voicemail from Nanny calling him unstable. He ignored them all and called Cornell Sullivan instead. Brother, Cornell answered. I've been hoping you'd call. I need your help. Name it. Remember what you told me before the wedding? About the Buchanans. Every word. I need everything you found. Every lawsuit. Every allegation. Every whisper of wrongdoing. And I need it in a format I can use. Cornell was quiet for a beat. What happened? Adam told him. The whole story, from Dylan's reading struggles to the sign around his neck, from Mallory's betrayal to his promise in that room. When he finished, Cornell's voice was steel. I'm coming over. We start tonight. Cornell arrived an hour later with his laptop and a file box. He was a tall man, black, with sharp features and sharper instincts. They'd met in film school and bonded over their shared belief that documentary work could change the world. Cornell specialized in investigative journalism, the kind that exposed corporate fraud and political corruption. Before we start, Cornell said, I need to ask, how far are you willing to go? All the way. I mean legally, ethically. This could get messy. They humiliated my son in front of 38 people. Mallory helped them. As far as I'm concerned, they declared war, and I'm responding in kind. Cornell nodded slowly. Then let's burn their world down. They worked through the night. Cornell had been thorough in his pre-wedding research, compiling information on the Buchanan family that painted a disturbing picture. Nanny's tenure as principal had left a trail of destroyed children. Cornell had found 3 lawsuits from former students alleging emotional abuse and discrimination. The cases had been settled with NDAs buried under layers of legal protection. But Cornell had found the students, now adults, willing to talk off the record. They're scared of her, Cornell explained. Even years later. But they want their stories told. Monroe's real estate empire had been built on predatory practices, buying properties in low-income neighborhoods, hiking rents, forcing residents out. There were pending lawsuits, claims of housing discrimination, allegations of bribing city officials. Foster had a history of ruthless business practices that bordered on illegal. Hostile takeovers, employee mistreatment, environmental violations his company had covered up. Lewis, the attorney, had been involved in several cases defending clients everyone knew were guilty. He'd weaponized the legal system to crush victims and protect abusers. This family, Cornell said, is rotten from the top down. They've used money and influence to stay protected, but they've left a trail of damaged people in their wake. Can we prove any of it? With the right approach? Yes. These people are arrogant. They think they're untouchable. That makes them sloppy. Adam stared at the evidence Cornell had compiled. We need more than historical evidence. We need them to reveal themselves now, in ways they can't deny or spin. What are you thinking? I'm thinking that people like the Buchanans can't resist an audience. They need to perform their superiority, demonstrate their power. If we give them the right stage, they'll expose themselves. Cornell's eyes lit up with understanding. You want to trap them. I want to give them enough rope to hang themselves. Then I want to make sure the whole world is watching when they do. I'm in. What's the play? Adam pulled out his notebook and began sketching ideas. He'd spent 8 years making documentaries that exposed powerful people. He knew their patterns, their weaknesses, their tells. The Buchanans thought they were special, but they were just another corrupt system waiting to be dismantled. First, we document everything. Every interaction, every message, every threat they make. We build a timeline. Already started. Cornell tapped his laptop. I've been archiving Mallory's text to you since you called. She's making threats about custody. Good. Let her. The more aggressive they get, the more they reveal. What about Dylan? He's the priority. I need to get him into therapy, get him help processing this. And I need to make sure Mallory can't use the courts to take him back into that environment. You'll need a lawyer. I know someone. Frances Bailey. She specializes in family law and doesn't back down from wealthy defendants. Cornell made a note. What else? We need to identify the other victims. The student's nanny destroyed, the tenant's Monroe displaced, the employees foster abused. We give them a platform to tell their stories. They'll fight back. NDAs, legal threats, intimidation. Let them. Every action they take reveals more of who they are. We document it all. This could take months. I've got time. And patience. Adam looked at the photo of Dylan on his desk. They broke something in my son. I'm going to make sure they pay for that in every way possible. Over the next 3 weeks, Adam built his case with the precision of a surgeon. He enrolled Dylan in a new school, one with excellent support for learning differences. He hired Frances Bailey, who immediately filed for sole custody and documented the Christmas incident with clinical detail. Mallory responded with fury. She hired a lawyer from Lewis's firm, someone who specialized in aggressive litigation. The custody battle began in earnest, and with it came a flood of accusations. Adam was unstable, paranoid, alienating Dylan from his mother, mentally unfit. Adam documented every false claim, every exaggeration, every attempt to manipulate the narrative. Frances turned each accusation into evidence of the Buchanans' willingness to lie and distort truth. They're making our case for us, Frances said during one meeting. Every filing shows a family more concerned with winning than with Dylan's welfare. Meanwhile, Cornell tracked down Nanny's former students. 3 of them agreed to filmed interviews, their faces obscured, their voices altered, but their stories devastating. Stories of public humiliation, of being forced to wear signs just like Dylan, of psychological torture disguised as discipline. She called them her correction techniques, one former student explained. She'd identify the weak ones, the kids who were struggling, and she'd break them down in front of everyone. She said she was building character, but what she was really doing was feeding her need for power. Adam watched the interviews, his resolve hardening. This wasn't just about Dylan anymore. This was about stopping a cycle of abuse that had been running for decades. He also discovered something interesting about Monroe's business. The company was preparing for a major refinancing deal. They needed to maintain a clean public image to secure favorable terms. Any scandal could jeopardize millions in financing. That's our opening, Cornell said. Hit them where it hurts, their wallet and their reputation. Not yet, Adam replied. First, we need them to make a mistake. A big one. Something they can't explain away. The opportunity came 3 weeks after Christmas. Mallory filed for an emergency custody hearing, claiming Adam was preventing her from seeing Dylan. It was a lie. Adam had offered reasonable visitation, but Mallory had refused unless Dylan apologized for embarrassing the family. The hearing was scheduled for mid-January. Adam knew the Buchanans would attend in force, ready to present their version of events, and he was ready for them. The custody hearing was held in a sterile courtroom in Brooklyn. Judge Roscoe Mayo presided, a man known for being fair but intolerant of games. Adam sat with Frances, while Mallory sat with her family's attorney, Kurt Rocha, flanked by Nanny and Foster. Monroe sat in the back, silent as always. Rocha opened aggressively. "Your Honor, Mr. Hendricks is engaged in parental alienation of the most egregious kind. He removed the child from the family Christmas celebration without permission, has since refused reasonable contact with the mother, and has been filling the child's head with lies about the Buchanan family." Frances stood. "Your Honor, we have documented evidence of what occurred at the Christmas celebration that directly contradicts Mr. Rocha's claims." "What kind of evidence?" "Photographic evidence, text message records, and witness statements." Adam had been busy. He'd contacted 2 of the relatives who'd been at Christmas, younger cousins who'd been horrified by what happened, but too intimidated to speak up. With promises of anonymity, they provided statements. More importantly, Adam had worn a small recording device he used for documentary work. He'd recorded everything. Frances played the audio for the court. Nanny's voice, clear and cold, instructing Dylan to walk around the room. Mallory's voice saying, "It's just a lesson." The silence of 38 adults who let it happen. Judge Mayo's expression darkened as he listened. When the recording ended, he looked at Mallory. "Ms. Hendricks, did you participate in this incident?" Mallory's face was pale. "It was, my mother was trying to teach him. Did you help attach a sign to your 5-year-old son that said, 'I ruined this family'? It wasn't meant." "Answer the question." "Yes, but..." "And you paraded him around a room full of adults?" Rocha stood. "Your Honor, this was a family matter, an internal disciplinary action. This was child abuse," Judge Mayo said flatly. "Psychological and emotional abuse documented by the child's own mother." Nanny stood up from her seat. "Your Honor, if I may." "You may not." "Sit down, ma'am. I'm Nanny Buchanan. I was a school principal for 30 years. And I'm a family court judge with 20 years on the bench." "Sit down." But Nanny couldn't stop herself. This was her pattern. She had to control the room, had to impose her authority. This court needs to understand that Dylan is a troubled child who requires firm guidance. His father has been enabling his weaknesses. A 5-year-old child who struggles with reading is not weak. He likely has a learning disability that requires support, not humiliation. I've dealt with hundreds of children like him. And how many of them did you traumatize? Judge Mayo's voice cut like ice. "I'm looking at statements from 3 former students of yours, Ms. Buchanan. All describe similar incidents of public humiliation under your watch." Nanny went rigid. Adam felt a surge of satisfaction. Cornell had gotten the statements to Frances, who'd filed them as supporting evidence. The trap was closing. "Those are lies." "Are they?" "Because they describe the same methods you used on your grandson. Same signs, same public shaming, same justifications about building character." Rocha tried to intervene. "Your Honor, those statements are hearsay. They're establishing a pattern of behavior. And this court takes patterns very seriously." Judge Mayo turned to Mallory. "Ms. Hendricks, I'm going to ask you directly. Do you believe what happened to your son at Christmas was appropriate?" Mallory looked at her mother, then at the judge. Adam could see the war on her face. Years of conditioning against the evidence of her own eyes. My mother has more experience." "That's not what I asked. Do you think it was appropriate to humiliate your son that way?" "It was meant to teach him." "Yes or no?" Mallory's hands were shaking. "I don't know." "Then you're not fit to have custody until you figure out." Judge Mayo made a note. "I'm awarding temporary full custody to Mr. Hendricks. Ms. Hendricks will have supervised visitation only, pending completion of parenting classes and a psychological evaluation." "You can't do this." Nanny was on her feet again. "We're the Buchanan family, which means nothing in this courtroom. I don't care about your name or your money. I care about a child who was abused by his extended family while his mother stood by and watched." Judge Mayo's gaze swept across the family. Mr. Buchanan, Monroe, you were present at this event. Do you have anything to say? Monroe stood slowly. For the first time in Adam's memory, the old man spoke with something like conviction. My wife sometimes takes things too far. The courtroom went silent. Nanny stared at her husband in shock. I should have stopped it, Monroe continued. I've let too much happen over the years. That boy didn't deserve what happened. Thank you for your honesty, sir. Judge Mayo returned his attention to the lawyers. I want a full psychological evaluation of the child to document any trauma. I want Ms. Hendricks in parenting classes within 2 weeks. And I want a follow-up hearing in 60 days to reassess the situation. He banged his gavel. We're adjourned. Adam exhaled, feeling the weight of the moment. It wasn't complete victory. Mallory still had parental rights, but it was protection for Dylan. And it was public record of what the Buchanans had done. Outside the courtroom, Nanny grabbed Adam's arm. This isn't over. You're right. It's not. You've made a powerful enemy. I've documented a child abuser. There's a difference. Her eyes flashed with rage. I will destroy you. You already tried. You failed. Foster joined his mother. We'll appeal. We'll tie this up in courts for years. And every filing, every appeal, every legal action will be more evidence of your family's priorities. You're more interested in winning than in Dylan's welfare. The court sees it. Eventually, everyone will. No one will believe you, Nanny hissed. We're respected in this community. You're nobody. That's the beautiful part, Adam said calmly. I don't need to be somebody. I just need to be right. And I am. He walked away, leaving the Buchanan family standing in the courthouse hallway, their carefully constructed facade beginning to crack. That night, Adam and Cornell reviewed their next steps. The custody battle had been won, but the larger war continued. The court case is public record now, Cornell noted. Local media will pick it up. The Buchanan name will be associated with child abuse. But they'll spin it, Adam said. They'll claim bias, manipulation, that I'm an angry ex using the system, which is why we need to control the narrative. You're a documentary filmmaker. Make a documentary. Adam had been thinking the same thing. A comprehensive expose, not just what happened to Dylan, but the pattern of abuse. Nanny's methods as principal, Monroe's business practices, Foster's corporate behavior. Can you get it made? That takes funding, distribution. I have contacts. People who've been wanting me to do something bigger, more visible. This could be it. It's personal, though. That'll be a liability. It's personal, Adam agreed. But that makes it powerful. I can speak from inside the experience, show viewers exactly what these people do to maintain control. They worked until dawn, outlining the documentary structure. It would open with Dylan's story, then expand to show the systemic nature of the Buchanan's cruelty. They'd interview Nanny's former students, Monroe's displaced tenants, Foster's former employees. They'd document the family's legal intimidation tactics, their use of wealth to escape consequences. And they'd show the Christmas incident itself. Adam had the audio recording, and one of the horrified relatives had secretly taken photos on her phone, showing Dylan walking around with the sign. She'd sent them to Adam with a note. I'm ashamed I didn't stop it. Please use these. This will ruin them, Cornell said quietly. Good. Adam, I need you to be sure. Once this goes public, there's no walking it back. Your son will be part of a very public story. Mallory will never forgive you. The Buchanans will use every resource they have to destroy you. They already destroyed my family. I'm just making sure the world knows what they are. Cornell nodded. Then let's make a film that changes things. The documentary came together over the next 6 weeks. Adam titled it Lessons in Cruelty, the Buchanan Method. It was 90 minutes of devastating testimony, documented evidence, and careful analysis of how wealthy families weaponized their power. The former students' interviews were heartbreaking. They described years of therapy to recover from Nanny's teaching methods. One woman, now 30, broke down describing how the public humiliation she'd endured had led to a suicide attempt at 16. She broke something in me, the woman said, her face obscured, her voice altered. I spent 15 years believing I was worthless because she told me I was in front of everyone I knew. Monroe's displaced tenants described families torn apart when rents suddenly doubled, forcing them from homes they'd lived in for generations. Several had been evicted right before Christmas, their belongings placed on the street while the Buchanan's lawyers argued everything was perfectly legal. Foster's former employees described a workplace culture of fear and retaliation. One man had been fired after reporting safety violations. Another woman had been blacklisted across the industry after complaining about discrimination. And throughout the documentary, woven through every story, was Dylan's experience. Adam showed the photos of his son wearing that sign, played the audio of Nanny instructing him to parade around the room. He interviewed Judge Mayo, who spoke carefully about patterns of abuse in wealthy families who believe they're above accountability. The final section focused on what happened after: Mallory's refusal to acknowledge wrongdoing, the family's legal threats, their attempt to silence victims with NDAs and intimidation. Adam ended the documentary with a direct address to camera. The Buchanans aren't unique. There are families like them in every community, people who use wealth and social status to shield themselves from consequences while destroying anyone they consider weak. This documentary is for their victims. You're not crazy. You're not too sensitive. You're not the problem. They are. Cornell sat beside Adam as they watched the final cut. This is powerful work, brother. Your best. Will it be enough to change the Buchanans? Maybe not, but it'll give their victims a voice. And it'll make sure what happened to Dylan doesn't happen to someone else in silence. Adam submitted the documentary to a major streaming platform that had been courting him for years. They accepted it immediately, recognizing both the quality of the work and its potential impact. Release date was set for March 1st, 2 months after the Christmas incident. The Buchanans learned about the documentary 3 weeks before its release when the streaming platform announced it on social media. The backlash was immediate and massive. Nanny sent a cease and desist letter claiming defamation. Adam's lawyer, Francis, responded with documentation proving every claim in the documentary. Nanny's lawyers went silent. Foster tried to use his business connections to pressure the platform to pull the documentary. They refused, noting that nothing in the film was false and that documentary journalism is protected speech. Lewis filed a motion claiming the documentary violated Dylan's privacy. Judge Mayo dismissed it, noting that Adam had full custody and the right to share his son's story, and that the public interest in exposing child abuse outweighed privacy concerns. Monroe, surprisingly, did nothing. The old man had been quiet since the custody hearing, and according to rumors Cornell had heard, he'd moved into one of his company's corporate apartments, separated from Nanny. Mallory's response was personal. She sent Adam a long text message, full of pain and accusation. "You're destroying my family for revenge. You're using our son as a weapon. You're no better than you claim we are." Adam responded simply, "I'm protecting our son and making sure you can't do this to anyone else. There's a difference." She didn't respond. On March 1st, Lessons in Cruelty, the Buchanan Method, went live. Within 24 hours, it was trending on social media. Within 48 hours, major news outlets were covering the story. Within a week, it had been viewed over 5 million times. The public response was overwhelming. Former students of Nanny's contacted Adam, sharing similar stories. Tenants from Monroe's buildings organized a protest. Foster's company faced boycotts and lost several major contracts. But the most significant impact came from somewhere unexpected: the police. One of Nanny's former students had mentioned in her interview that she'd stolen money from her parents to avoid going to school, terrified of facing more humiliation. The theft had gone unreported, but Nanny had known about it and used it as leverage for years, threatening to report it if the student ever spoke publicly about the abuse. That was extortion, and it was a crime. Detectives contacted Adam, asking to interview him and access his research materials. He cooperated fully, turning over everything Cornell had compiled. Within 2 weeks, Nanny Buchanan was arrested and charged with multiple counts of extortion and child endangerment. The evidence from the documentary, combined with new testimony from victims who finally felt safe to speak, built an overwhelming case. Foster was investigated for environmental and labor violations his company had covered up. Monroe's business faced federal inquiry into housing discrimination practices. The Buchanan empire, built on decades of cruelty disguised as excellence, collapsed in spectacular fashion. The trial began in May, 3 months after Dylan's Christmas humiliation. Adam attended every day, sitting in the gallery with Cornell, watching as prosecutors systematically dismantled Nanny's carefully constructed image. The former students testified, their faces visible now, their voices clear. They described years of calculated cruelty, of a woman who identified vulnerable children and broke them methodically. The prosecution presented evidence of 6 different students Nanny had extorted over the years, using knowledge of minor infractions to maintain control long after they'd left her school. She was still controlling me at 25, one woman testified. I gotten a good job, was starting to build a life, and she called to remind me that she could still ruin me if I ever spoke about what she'd done. The fear never went away. Nanny's defense argued that her methods, while perhaps harsh by modern standards, were within the bounds of educational discipline. The prosecution played the audio of Dylan's humiliation, and the courtroom went silent. This isn't discipline, the prosecutor said. This is torture. This is a woman who enjoys breaking children because it makes her feel powerful. On the 3rd day, Monroe took the stand, not for the defense, but for the prosecution. The courtroom buzzed with shock as the elderly man, bent with age and regret, testified against his wife. I should have stopped her decades ago, Monroe said quietly. I saw what she did to students, to employees, to our own children. But she was so certain, so forceful, and I was weak. I let her destroy people because it was easier than standing up to her. Why are you testifying now? The prosecutor asked. Because I saw what she did to my grandson, and I saw his father do what I never could, say no. Stand up. Protect someone who couldn't protect themselves. If this old man can finally find some courage, maybe it's not too late to do the right thing. Nanny's face was stone throughout Monroe's testimony, but Adam saw the cracks forming. This was her ultimate loss. Not the charges, but the betrayal of the one person who'd enabled her for 50 years. The jury deliberated for 3 hours. They found Nanny guilty on all counts. At sentencing, the judge was unsparing. Ms. Buchanan, you spent 30 years in a position of trust and used it to inflict systematic cruelty on children. You justified your actions as education, but what you really did was feed your need for power by destroying those who couldn't fight back. The court sentences you to 3 years in prison, followed by 5 years of supervised probation. You are permanently prohibited from any contact with minors and from working in any educational capacity. Nanny was led from the courtroom in handcuffs. She didn't look at Monroe, didn't look at her sons, didn't look at anyone. The woman who demanded everyone's attention was finally reduced to just another criminal. Foster and Lewis faced their own reckonings. Foster's environmental violations resulted in massive fines and a federal consent decree requiring independent oversight of his company. Several executives, including Foster, were charged with knowingly violating environmental laws. Foster took a plea deal, 2 years in federal prison, restitution to affected communities, and permanent ban from serving as a corporate officer. Lewis lost his law license after an ethics board investigation found he'd helped clients destroy evidence and intimidate witnesses. The Bar Association's decision was scathing. Mr. Buchanan weaponized the legal system to protect abusers and silence victims. He is unfit to practice law. Monroe, true to his courtroom testimony, took steps to make amends. He restructured his real estate company, hiring an independent board to oversee operations. He established a fund to compensate displaced tenants and implemented fair housing practices. It didn't erase decades of harm, but it was something. He also reached out to Adam. I know you have no reason to forgive me. I sat there and watched while my wife tortured my grandson. But if you're willing, I'd like to be part of Dylan's life. Not the grandfather I was, silent and complicit, but the one I should have been all along. Adam considered it carefully. He consulted Dylan, who said simply, Grandpa Monroe said sorry. Nobody else did. They started with supervised visits. Monroe taking Dylan to museums, reading to him, being present without trying to correct or control. It was tentative, fragile, but it was something. Mallory was the hardest piece. She'd lost her mother to prison, watched her brothers fall from their positions of power, seen her family name become synonymous with abuse. She completed her court-ordered parenting classes, underwent psychological evaluation, and slowly began rebuilding a relationship with Dylan. It took 6 months before Adam allowed unsupervised visits. It took 9 months before Mallory could admit what she'd done wrong. They met at a coffee shop in Brooklyn, neutral territory. Mallory looked different, smaller somehow, less certain. The Buchanan armor had cracked. "I watched the documentary," she said. "All of it. I watched what happened to Dylan from the outside, and I saw what a monster I was." "You weren't a monster," Adam said quietly. "You were trapped in a toxic system and chose your mother's approval over your son's safety. That's not monstrous, it's weak." She flinched, but didn't argue. "My therapist says I've been conditioned since childhood to prioritize my mother's opinion over my own judgment. That doesn't excuse what I did." "No, it doesn't. I helped pin that sign on our son. I told him it was just a lesson when I knew, somewhere inside, that it was cruelty, and I chose her over him." Tears ran down Mallory's face. "I don't know if he'll ever forgive me. He might. Kids are more forgiving than adults. What about you?" Adam was quiet for a long moment. "I don't know if I can forgive you for that day, for choosing her, for helping hurt him, but I can work with you to co-parent, if you prove you've changed." "How do I prove that?" "By putting Dylan first. Every time, even when it's hard, even when it costs you something." Mallory nodded. "I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to be the mother he deserved from the beginning. Then we can find a way forward." They worked out a custody arrangement, joint legal custody, with Adam having primary physical custody. Mallory would have Dylan every other weekend and Wednesday evenings. It wasn't perfect, but it was workable. Dylan was cautious with his mother at first, testing boundaries, seeing if she'd revert to the old patterns. But Mallory held firm, and slowly, painfully, they began rebuilding. A year after that Christmas, Adam and Dylan sat in their apartment, watching the anniversary coverage of the documentary's release. Lessons in Cruelty had won several awards, spawned discussions about wealth and accountability, and led to reforms in how elite schools handle discipline. "Dad," Dylan looked up from his book. He was reading now, slowly but steadily, with help from a wonderful tutor who understood dyslexia. "Are the bad people still bad?" "Some of them learned. Some of them didn't. Grandma Nanny didn't learn." "No, she didn't. But Grandpa Monroe did. And maybe Mom is learning." "Yeah, buddy. Maybe she is." Dylan went back to his book, and Adam felt something settle in his chest. Not quite peace. The damage done to his son would take years to fully heal, but something like resolution. The Buchanans had tried to break Dylan, tried to mold him into their image of what a child should be. Instead, they'd revealed themselves for what they were. And Adam had made sure the world was watching when they did. His phone buzzed. A message from Cornell. New project? Documentary about corporate whistleblowers. Could use your touch. Adam looked at Dylan, content and reading, no longer the trembling child from that Christmas. "Let's see what happens next." He texted back, "I'm in." Because that was the thing about standing up to bullies. Once you do it successfully, you realize you can do it again. And there were always more bullies who needed exposing. The Buchanans had taught him that. They'd pushed him to the edge, forced him to find his power, and learned the hard way that some people don't break. They fight back. And when they fight back, they win. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen. And I'll see you there.